But for now, let's go back to Michigan, the home invasion hoax murder trial. And right now, we are going to go to the testimony. We just heard from a victim's neighbor who said she heard the commotion, but now the wife of this jeweler, the victim in this case, is on the stand. Let's go in together.
And with Golden Glitter, which is the jewelry store, and then on the other side was Hamtramck Pawnbrokers.
Okay, where were they located, those stores?
In Hamtramck.
Okay, and he would go there on a regular basis?
Yes.
Did he have a regular schedule that you were aware of when he'd go and when he'd typically come home?
Yes.
Would he vary that schedule very much, or is he someone who was pretty consistent with his schedule?
Pretty consistent.
Okay, and during the week, Monday through Friday, what times would he approximately leave your residence and then go to those stores?
About 12 noon.
Okay, and what time would he typically return home?
7.
Did he work on the weekend?
Only Saturday.
Okay. What type of car did he drive at the time?
An Audi.
And was it a brand new one or an older one?
Older one.
And he had had that vehicle for some time?
Yes.
How long do you think it was, best guess, that he had had that car?
5, 6 years.
Okay, and did you have your own car?
Yes.
What kind of car did you have?
Infinity.
Okay. When your husband would go to these stores, were you aware of whether or not he'd ever carry a firearm for protection?
Yes.
And what type of gun was that?
A Glock.
Okay, and was your husband right-handed or left-handed?
Right-handed.
Okay, and would he wear that holster on the right side?
Yes.
Now, when your husband would go back and forth between the stores, where were you living at that point in time?
And Rochester.
Is that located in the city of Rochester Hills in Oakland County, Michigan?
Yes.
And how long have you lived there at that residence?
26 years.
Because of the nature of his business, dealing with pawn and dealing with jewelry, did you have any type of safe at your residence?
No.
Nothing in it, no wall safe, no portable safe, no safe at all?
No.
Would your husband keep cash otherwise outside of the safe in a mattress or something like that at your house?
No.
Would you keep any type of valuable jewelry at your house?
No.
Did you have any jewelry that was costume jewelry?
Yes.
And where did you keep that?
In the jewelry box in my room, my bedroom.
Okay. Did you have any jewelry that was better than costume jewelry?
No.
Okay. When we get to October 10th of 2024, do you recall the events of that day and that evening?
Yes.
Okay. Were you at home that evening?
Yes.
Okay. Approximately 10 o'clock p.m. Can you tell us if anything unusual happened?
A gentleman, Hernandez, came to the front door and said that he was from DTE and needed to check for a gas leak.
Okay. Now, you identified him by name as defendant Hernandez just now on the record. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. You did testify earlier at the preliminary examination back in district court December of last year?
Yes.
Okay. And you identified one of the defendants as defendant Hernandez back then?
Yes.
Okay. Was defendant Hernandez alone when he came to that door?
No.
Okay. Now, who was the other person that was at that door with him?
Zuazo was not at the door. He was standing on the walk.
Okay. There was a second person with him?
Yes.
Okay. Was that person, what description of nationality, ethnic background would you say that person was?
Average size, average height, black.
Okay. Where was it when you were first attention drawn to somebody being at the front door?
My Ring camera gave me a notification through my phone.
Okay. And where were you physically at in your house when you got that notification?
Upstairs by the master bedroom.
When you say you had Ring cameras around the outside of the house?
Yes.
And those Ring cameras were set up to notify you if somebody came to the door?
Yes.
And was it a Ring camera system where you could actually view on your camera what was going on those cameras?
Yes.
And you could actually see on your camera what was going on at the front door?
Yes.
Now, after you see that, do you leave your master bedroom or do you stay there?
No, I stay in the hallway by the door.
Okay, and when we talk about the hallway, are we talking about where the banister is?
Yes.
And what do you see happen as you're standing at the banister?
My husband opens the front door and asks Hernandez, could he help him?
Okay. Did you know where your husband was before he walked to the front door?
In the family room.
Okay. So what do you see happen when your husband opens the front door?
I see Hernandez standing there with a clipboard asking my husband to sign it for permission to enter the house.
Okay. Were you able to hear the discussion that defendant Hernandez was having with your husband?
Only that he asked him to come in and check for the heat exchanger on the furnace.
Okay. Was there anything said about who they were at the door?
Just DTE workers.
Okay. Could you see any way that they were, let me just say, that defendant Hernandez was dressed?
He was had a yellow vest on and a hat and mask.
Okay. And how would you describe his size?
Very large.
Okay. What did your husband say to them when when Hernandez asked about coming inside?
Well, he asked, well, why? And Hernandez said he needed to check for a gas leak.
Okay. Did you get involved in the conversation?
Yes.
And how did you get involved with the conversation?
I asked Hernandez, I said, isn't it a little late for you to be coming to the door?
Okay. Was there any response to that?
No, he just said, I'm sorry.
All right, a bit of an issue with the feed there, so we're going to slip in our break while we get that checked. We are watching this home invasion hoax murder trial for two different defendants, two different juries, a lot of logistical movement there inside of the courtroom, but we'll have more testimony after this break.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a family of four faces twisted allegations of caging and sexually abusing foster children. We'll bring you takeaways from today's big hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
Covering the country's biggest trials before we bring you inside the courtroom. Plus, the true crime cases you want to know more about in our daily spotlight.
Opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8/7 Central on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. We are continuing to follow this case out of Michigan. It's against two different defendants, Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo. They're both charged with murder and unlawful imprisonment in the death of pawn shop owner Hussein Murray. And we were just hearing from Murray's wife on the stand. Prosecutors say that they posed as utility workers looking for gas leaks to access the home. Then they bound the victim and his wife in duct tape before robbing them. She did survive, and he was found dead in the basement with that duct tape still around his face, hands, and feet. Let's go back in, picking it up where we left off with the wife's testimony on the stand.
Did you hear any cries
good.
out at all?
No.
Also, folks have different abilities physically as we age. How would you characterize your husband's physical abilities at his age?
Very active and strong.
He was a strong man?
Yes.
And he was still a strong man at his age?
Yes.
What's the first thing that you remember after that 10 to 15 minutes passes while the two defendants are in the basement?
I was sitting at my kitchen table, and Hernandez comes up from the basement, and I stepped towards him to see if he needed something.
And what happens then?
Then he asks me, he says, where's the jewelry and where's the money? And where's the safe? I'm sorry. And I said, I have no safe. And he says, where's the jewelry? And I said, in the bank, in the safety deposit box. And then he says, where's the money? And I said, just what's in my purse and what's in my husband's pocket.
And how much money did you have, especially remember, in your purse that day?
About $300.
And how much would your husband typically carry on him in cash?
About $5,000.
And can you tell us, after you responded that way, what happens?
Zuazo comes upstairs also. And
So he comes up behind defendant Hernandez?
yes.
And how long would you say the delay between defendant Hernandez coming up and defendant Zuazo is between that?
Seconds.
Okay. Were you still talking to defendant Hernandez about your money and your cash and your husband's cash at the time Zuazo appeared, or was that part of the conversation over?
That was over, and I asked him, where's my husband? Several times.
Okay. Are you asking defendant Hernandez where your husband is?
I was asking both of them.
Okay. And what happens when you're asking about your husband?
Zuazo tells me that he's sleeping, and I know there's blood on his vest, and I start screaming.
Okay. And what happens as, let me ask you this, does defendant Hernandez say anything in response after defendant Zuazo says he's sleeping?
Not that I recall.
Okay. What's your response after you see the blood?
I was screaming, and Hernandez hits me in the face to cover my mouth.
Okay. And when you say he hits you in your face, there's a front, there's a right, and there's a left side of your face. Which side, if you can remember, he struck you?
The left.
Was it a hard or soft strike?
Hard.
Did you receive injuries from that strike?
Yes.
Did you later, after the events are over, end up going to get medical attention for the strike?
Yes.
Did you end up losing your front tooth at some point from related to the strike?
Yes.
How long was it after the strike that you ended up losing your tooth?
About a month, 3 weeks a month.
Okay. After you're struck, what happens next?
He asks me if I will stop screaming when he removes his hand from my mouth and sits me at the kitchen chair.
Okay. And what, if anything, is he saying to you at that point?
Again, he's asking me, where is the safe? Where is the jewelry? Where is the money? And I would reply the same answer.
At that point in time, where is defendant Zuazo?
He went up the back stairs up to the master bedroom.
Okay, and you saw him go up the back stairs?
Yes.
Okay. From your recollections of that day, did defendant Hernandez ever go upstairs?
No.
What's going on as defendant Zuazo is upstairs? What's going on with you and defendant Hernandez?
Hernandez is binding my hands and my ankles together.
Okay,
Duct tape.
and is that against your will?
Yes.
Okay. Did you notice if any of your items were taken that day?
Yes.
What was taken from you?
When Zuazo came downstairs, I saw that he was carrying a drawer from my jewelry box.
Okay, and that was without your consent?
Yes.
Was there anything taken from your purse that was without your consent?
Yes.
What was taken from your purse?
$300.
Okay. Were there any other items that you were missing after that day?
Well, my phone, Hernandez took my phone and put it in his pocket and took my iPhone watch and threw it across the table.
Okay. And obviously there was police involvement. Did you ever recover your husband's Glock? Was that ever recovered?
No.
While Hernandez is in the kitchen, do you see what else he's doing while he's there?
He nonchalantly goes to one of the kitchen drawers, opens it, looks at it, and shuts it.
Okay. Do you see defendant Zuazo return?
Yes.
Okay. And after he returns, does he come down the front stairs or those back stairs again?
The back stairs.
How long were they in the house after defendant Zuazo returns from the upstairs?
A couple minutes, because Hernandez wanted to put me in the closet, but because I was bound, I couldn't move, so he sat me back in the chair.
And what do you mean by he tried to put you in a closet?
They wanted me to, Hernandez and Zuazo wanted to put me in the closet and shut the door, I imagine.
Okay, and when you say they, I think you then specified, but what were each of those individuals doing at that point? Tell us specifically what was Hernandez doing to try to put you in a closet?
He grabbed me by the shoulder and the arm, but then I was really wobbly, and he sat me down in the chair.
Okay. Can you tell me what defendant Zuazo was doing?
He looked a little nervous and was like moving from foot to foot, and told Hernandez, "Let's go, bro."
Okay.
I didn't hear that quote from the co-defendant.
Ms. Murray, can you repeat, please?
Zuazo asked Hernandez, "Let's go, bro."
Okay, I'm going to show you what's been. And did they exit the house?
Yes,
How did they exit the house?
through the garage door.
Can I have just 1 second? Did they go out the garage door, did you say?
Yes,
How long were they in the garage?
2 or 3 minutes.
Okay. And did you still have your Infinity keys?
No, Hernandez took my keys.
What do you hear coming from the garage?
I hear the door slam down, the garage door. I hear that slam.
And was any type of remote control clicker for the garage connected to your keys?
No,
Okay. How was it that you were able to free yourself from being duct taped?
around my ankles there was a small tab of tape that was loose, and I worked it around until it came off.
Okay. And were you able to make a phone call to the authorities since your phone, the cell phone was gone?
Yes,
And how were you able to do that?
the house phone.
Okay. And did you call 911?
Yes,
And how long would you say it was after 911 that the deputies arrived?
5 minutes, it was quick.
Okay. In that 5 minutes before the deputies arrived, did you hear anything or any sounds or noises coming from the basement?
No,
Did you go down into the basement?
no,
Okay. And to this date, you haven't seen any photos of the basement, is that correct?
correct.
Okay. I'm not going to show you any photos today either, but I just want to ask you just a couple things. Did your husband wear any type of rings or jewelry?
Yes,
And what kind of ring or jewelry would he wear?
he had a diamond jewelry, a ring on his finger, and a diamond watch.
Okay. And when you say a ring on his finger, what hand was that finger attached to, right or left?
I think it was the right.
Okay. And you...
Linda Murray, such a brave witness. She lived through the unimaginable, her husband being killed inside the home where she was. We have to get to a break. Our thanks to Alexis Rosenberg for her analysis. And we have more of this trial out of Michigan coming up in just a moment. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for being with us and following along as we cover a lot of trials here on Court TV. Right now we are in Michigan, where our newest live trial is underway. Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo are the two defendants, both charged with felony murder and 2 counts of unlawful imprisonment. And they're accused of really pulling a hoax on a family that turned deadly, posing as utility workers to gain access inside of the home of Linda and Hussein Murray. They were owners of a local pawn shop where they had a lot of jewelry. Linda was allegedly tied up with duct tape and hit by the defendants, and her husband was killed in the basement of their home. They've pleaded not guilty to these charges, and there are 2 juries that are hearing the testimony in this case. Separate ones will be making a decision on each defendant. Let's pick it up where we left off inside of this courtroom. The surviving victim, that wife, Linda Murray, she is on the stand telling everything from her perspective.
And you indicated that he had a nice watch. Was that a Rolex watch?
Yes,
Okay. Did your husband wear glasses?
no,
No glasses.
Only for reading.
For reading?
Yes.
Okay, so let me show you what's been marked as photograph 1EE. It should appear up there. Does photograph 1EE accurately depict the injury that you sustained to your face?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 1FF. Does 1FF show a side view of the injury that you sustained to your face?
Yes.
I'll show you what's been marked as 1GG. Does that photograph accurately depict the injury that you sustained to your wrist?
Yes.
And I'll show you what's been marked as 1HH. Does that accurately depict the injury that you sustained to your shoulder?
Yes.
Your Honor, the people would move those exhibits 1EE, 1FF, and 1GG and 1HH into evidence.
Any objection?
I have no objection.
No. All right, they're in.
Once the sheriff office got involved, they went through the house that day?
Yes.
Okay, and I'm going to show you some photographs. I'm going to show you what's been marked as 1D. Okay, do you recognize that as the top of your stairs?
Yes.
Okay, you see the closet that's depicted in that photograph is open?
Yes.
Would you have left that closet open when you were in the house?
No.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as Exhibit 1F, leading into your master. Do you recognize that as your master?
Yes.
Do you recognize that chest of drawers?
Yes.
Was it left that way when you were last upstairs?
No.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 1H. It's a different view. Can you tell us what you see in 1H?
Drawers scattered on the floor.
Okay.
And items on the floor.
Okay. I'll show you what's been marked as 1I. Can you tell us what you see in that picture?
Drawers on the floor.
And 1K?
The armoire open.
Okay. And the drawers should be inside, but they're not inside. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you have any type of jewelry box upstairs?
Yes.
And where was that jewelry box kept?
In my closet.
Did you notice when you finally went through the house, was that jewelry box where it should have been?
No.
And can you tell us, do you recall where you found it?
It was laying on the floor in the master bedroom.
And were any of the drawers missing from there?
Yes, one.
And what was kept in that jewelry box?
Costume jewelry.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 3BB, as in boy. Do me a favor and look this way. Okay. Do you see 3BB?
Yes.
Okay. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
And how do you recognize that?
Those are my costume jewelry in my glass case.
Okay. And the Sheriff's Department later recovered these items and showed them to you?
Yes.
Did you identify those items as what was in the house before the defendants came in that day?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 3CC. Do you recognize that as the contents of your costume jewelry?
Yes.
I'm going to direct your attention to what's in the middle of that. It looks like some sort of award. Do you recognize that award?
Yes.
And can you tell us how you recognize that?
That was my grandfather's sports award that he got when he was young.
Okay. And that had been passed down through your family?
Yes.
I'm going to show you what's been marked as 3EE. You recognize that costume jewelry as some more of the costume jewelry?
Yes.
All of these items were taken without your consent?
Yes.
As this case has progressed, did you turn over the Ring camera video to the Sheriff's Department?
Yes.
And you had a chance to review the Ring camera videos both from the 10th and from the 11th of October?
Yes.
Did they accurately reflect what occurred and what you remember happening on those Ring camera videos?
Yes.
And you also testified to that at preliminary examination?
Yes.
Your Honor, the people would move the Ring camera videos that have been designated 5C, 5D, and 5E and request to publish those.
Right, before we get to that, did you admit 3BB, 3C's what the witness just testified to? I don't see that as being admitted previously in the same.
I didn't, because the guy from Cato County is coming tomorrow, but I'll move those in today.
Okay, I mean, it's not, do it as you see fit. I just want to make sure we're not missing something. All right, so the Ring cameras are which numbers?
They got renumbered 5C, 5D, and 5E. They were all on just 5, but because of things, it got renumbered.
Okay, and then the parties have seen the Ring camera. Is there any objection to admission to it? Okay. All right, good then.
That's 5C, 5D, 5E, correct?
Yes. Permission to publish?
You may publish.
Thanks for stopping by. If you'd like to leave a message, you can do it now.
We're DTE. We're checking for gas leaks. Went into the restaurant, so but you thought ribs for
Just a minute.
from what?
At the front door. I don't know.
It's DTE.
DTE. That's kind of late for you guys to be coming around.
I'm gonna be working in the neighborhood.
DTE. I don't know. Be careful.
Oh, well, we just got a question. Have you guys had, are you Mr. Hussein Murray? Yeah. Well, next week? When? You gotta check your back, at the house for the open meter. Thank you. On the street.
Hey, what's here? Hello? No, I'm sorry.
Is this the quick enough?
Yes.
And just for the record,
Well, after watching those videos, let's squeeze in a break. These jurors taking in that Ring camera footage, and you can hear the instincts of Linda Murray. She's saying that this is a strange time that you all have come around, and we don't even know the name DTE. Well, when we come back, we'll not only go back into that Michigan courtroom, but we'll keep you updated on what's happening in Tennessee. This case that we're following, where a man was already convicted, Brandon Isabel, of throwing his 2-day-old baby in the river and killing her mother, who was his girlfriend. The jury is deciding on whether he should get a chance at parole, and that light that you're seeing there that's off right now, if it comes on, it means that the jury has a question, they want a break, or they have a verdict. So we will take you in once they reach a decision. So again, more testimony coming up in the case against Hernandez and Zuazo there in Michigan.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a family of 4 faces twisted allegations of caging and sexually abusing foster children. We'll bring you takeaways from today's big hearing.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8, 7 Central, only on Court TV.
4 dead students.
None of it seemed to make any sense.
He was evil.
What devastation.
All I can do is scream.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rowlands. New episode Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. Let's go back in together to this Michigan courtroom that we are watching together, the home invasion hoax murder trial. 2 men stand accused of posing as utility workers and then killing the owner of a pawn shop jewelry and tying up his wife at their home. This all happened in October of last year. There are 2 juries that are going to be hearing this case, 1 for each defendant. And right now, the wife of the victim is on the stand. She's the one who survived. She was duct taped herself, and now she's talking about the aftermath of finding out that her husband was in the basement, killed.
So just be indicated for the record that was all
And I didn't want to bother you guys for late, but we had to check the outside. We go home. And I didn't want to bother you guys for late, but we had to check the outside.
Yeah, I understand. I understand. You are on the edge.
Listen, I said, how you doing today, sir? Good. I'm all right. So, you want to read? What am I signing for? Just to give us consent to check the inside of the home. So what we have to do is we have to check for like cracks in the heat.
And this next one is Exhibit 5D.
Did you go for
For
that?
the record, yes. And there's also a 5E, which is the garage video, which I didn't mention.
Any objection to 5E?
No, I've seen 5E, so I have no objection.
Okay, same. All right, then.
Come on, man. Let's keep it.
Let me ask you just a few questions. When we were watching the video, the October 10th video, it looks like Mr. Hernandez is wearing like a N95 mask. Do you recall him wearing a mask?
Yes.
And was defendant Zuazo also wearing some face covering at that time?
Yes.
Okay. On the October 11th time that they were at your house, was defendant Hernandez also wearing face covering?
Yes.
And was defendant Zuazo wearing a face covering?
Part of the time.
Okay. When you say part of the time, was there a point where that face covering gets moved?
I think when he came up the stairs from the basement, he wasn't wearing a mask.
Okay. So when he came up from the basement, defendant Zuazo's mask was not on?
Correct.
I don't have any other questions, Judge.
All right, cross-exam Zuazo.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Ms. Murray.
Good afternoon.
I know that you and I met back on the day of the preliminary examination, which was December 17th of last year. I'm just going to tell you the same thing that I said that day. My name is Michael McCarthy. I represent Joshua Zuazo. I have some questions to ask you here today regarding your testimony. And if I don't make one of my questions clear to you, please tell me that. Then I'll rephrase it, okay?
Okay.
I just want you to answer the questions, you know, that you understand the questions before you answer them.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Now, the event of what occurred on that day, the 11th of October, certainly nothing like that ever happened before in your lifetime, correct?
Correct.
Very traumatic, without question, correct?
Correct.
And now, almost a year has passed, and it's given you quite a bit of time to think about what occurred, correct?
Correct.
And whether you wanted to be thinking about it or not, you have this constantly on your mind, correct?
Correct.
And coming here to court again is something which, if you were able to have it fade from your memory, brought it all back to the foreground a second time, correct?
Correct.
And you're here now giving your testimony, and certainly this has been something you've been preparing for and weighing, and it's been weighing heavily on you as this day, the first day of October, approached, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And in order to be able to testify, you had to sit down and speak with the attorneys representing the prosecutor's office, correct?
Correct.
You had interviews with Mr. Petrofessa and perhaps with Mr. Magaro, correct?
Correct.
And you've also spoken with a number of law enforcement officers ever since the first day that this occurred, correct?
Correct.
They came to your house. Deputy Copeland was the first man through the door at your house. You remember that, right?
Correct.
And that was a pretty upsetting thing when you were talking with him about, you didn't even know what had happened at that point, right?
Correct.
I mean, you knew that you got tied up. There was something that happened with your property, but you didn't know where your husband was.
Correct.
And as the day wore on, things just got worse.
Correct.
And then after you were asked to step outside of the house, another deputy came along, Deputy Hagelin, and he took you to his police car, so at least you could be sitting down away from the house instead of sitting on your front porch as you were when you first encountered him, right?
Yes.
And because when you were sitting on the porch, one of the things you observed, you were sitting right there, was all the other deputies that came to your home to see what happened, right?
Yes.
And they were heavily armed, correct?
Yes.
And obviously everybody was taking what happened at your house very seriously, correct?
Yes.
All right. And so then you didn't go back into your house. Instead, you ended up going to the hospital, correct?
Yes.
And you had those pictures taken at some point during the day before you got to the hospital or before you got into a hospital bed. Is that right?
I'm not sure if it was the same day or the next day, but...
Okay. But those pictures were taken so that there would be a record of the injury you sustained, correct?
Yes.
And you spent the night, at least, of the 11th and the 12th of October in the hospital, right?
No.
No? How did that go?
I was released, and after they did CAT scan, I was released to go home.
During the time you were in the hospital, you met with another detective. Isn't that true?
Yes.
Detective Weitzman, I think his name is, or Wigeman, rather.
I assume.
Okay, but another detective
Yes.
came to see you while you were in the emergency room. Is that
Yes.
right? Okay. And then that same detective met with you some more times over the course of the next couple of days, correct?
Correct.
And those meetings were conducted at your son's home. Isn't that right?
Repeat that?
I said those meetings were conducted at your son's home. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so there was a lot of discussion about this incident at your house in those first few days. You would agree with that, right?
Yes.
And somewhere along the line, you learned what the name of the first person that had came to your door was, or had come to your door, rather, was Mr. Hernandez. You remember that?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury how it is you came to know what his...
Defense attorneys have to be very careful when cross-examining someone who is as sympathetic as Linda Murray here. Trial attorney Lateef Gray is with us. We've hit the pause button on that testimony. We'll pick it up once we come back from the break. But Lateef, I want to get your thoughts on what this defense is doing in the cross-exam.
Well, I agree with you about having to be gentle with certain witnesses, and it appears that that's exactly what he's doing. He's not being too aggressive, and he's not being too rough with his witness, which is a good thing.
We've got two different Ring cameras. We've got a N95 mask that at least one of the defendants is wearing the entire time. One may have taken it off at one point, and she remembers seeing his whole face. How does that complicate things, if at all? Because if it's 2 times, certainly even Hernandez's size seems to make him unique, even without the mask.
Yeah, I don't think it complicates things much because those ring videos are very clear. You can make out who's who, so I don't think it complicates things very much at all.
And real quick, Latif, before I let you go, the two juries, I've got to get your opinion on if you've seen that before, two separate juries, and what you think of the logistics of having different juries hear different opening statements, and we don't know how much more there's going to be a difference in terms of what they're going to hear.
I have seen this happen before, and it's very complicated because these two jurors are sitting in the same courtroom hearing evidence, and certain evidence might go only to certain defendants, and it's hard to unring certain bells. So it just complicates things. It probably would have been a lot easier to have two separate trials, but that's the way they chose to do it.
But here we are, and we know at least one of them is going to point the finger at the other one and say, I was just here for a robbery, not for a killing. Latif, thank you for that analysis. When we come back, we're going to pick it up right where we left off with Linda Murray on the stand, telling everything from her perspective of two men barging into her house. Rather, not barging. They said they were with the utility company, so they let them in, and things turned deadly. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for being with us as we watch together the home invasion hoax murder trial happening in Michigan. Two men on trial allegedly for murdering a 72-year-old pawn shop owner, Carlos Hernandez and Joshua Zuazo. They are both charged with murder and unlawful imprisonment in the death of Hussein Murray. And his wife is on the stand. She's talking about how these men that she says she could identify posed as utility workers to gain access. They duct tape her husband. He was downstairs when one of them came upstairs and told her he was, quote, sleeping, and she said she saw blood on his vest. Let's pick it up where we left off with Linda Murray, Hussein's wife, testifying.
Can you tell the jury how it is you came to know what his name was?
Police officer told me.
Okay. And then at some point, you came to know the name of Mr. Zuazo, is that right?
Yes.
And how was it that you came to know his name?
Through a police officer.
Okay. Now, did you learn those names on the same day, or did you learn those at different times? In other words, did you learn about Mr. Hernandez's name and Mr. Zuazo's name at the same time, or were those two separate occasions?
At the same time.
At the same time. Do you remember when that was?
A day or two after.
Okay, so somewhere, this occurred on a Friday, so somewhere over that weekend or the beginning of the following week. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because while you were interacting with the detectives that were working on this case, you were giving information to them. They had questions for you, correct?
Correct.
But they were providing information to you. Isn't that correct?
I'm not exactly sure what you mean.
Well, they told you the names
Yes.
of the two people who were the suspects they were investigating. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
And you weren't able to provide them with those names, correct?
Correct.
You didn't know the names of either of the men that came to your home, but at some point, the detectives told you those names, correct?
Yes.
And at some point, did you become aware of the fact that Mr. Hernandez was in custody?
Yes.
Okay. And that was because the detective told you that, right?
Yes.
Okay. Now, there was some news coverage of this story. You remember that, correct? Did you pay any attention to that?
Yes.
I mean, no one can blame you for doing that. I mean, this is something that affects you in the most severe way. So it would only be natural for you to be curious about seeing what the coverage was, right?
Yes.
Okay. And when that coverage was being provided, if it was on TV or in some newspaper, there were photographs, right?
Yes.
And photographs of Mr. Hernandez, right?
Yes.
And a photograph of Mr. Zuazo, isn't that right?
Yes.
And you've been very clear in your direct testimony in identifying Mr. Zuazo, correct?
Yes.
And but you also, when you met with the detectives, you told them that this man, the second man in the house, was wearing a mask. Is that right?
When he entered, yeah.
Yes. But when did you tell the detectives that, if you did, that when the second man came upstairs, he was not wearing a mask?
In the ambulance.
In the ambulance. And when you were in the ambulance, who rode with you? Was that Detective Hagelin?
I don't remember the officer riding with me. I remember the paramedic.
You told it to a paramedic?
No, I told it to the officer.
Okay, that's what I'm asking. I just want to get clarification. The first time you told anybody that the second person didn't have a mask on when he came upstairs into your kitchen was when you were in the ambulance?
Yes.
And that you're just sitting there in the ambulance, you hadn't moved yet, and the detective was there with you, is that it?
Yes.
Okay, and you don't know that man's name that you talked to?
At the time, no.
No. And have you seen him since?
Yes.
Okay. And do you know his name now?
No.
Okay. Fair enough. But somewhere along the line, you were shown a photograph of Mr. Zuazo. Is that correct?
Days later, yes.
Okay. Now, when you were shown that photograph, were you shown one photograph or were you shown a whole bunch of photographs?
I don't recall.
Okay. Did the detective or whoever it was you were interacting with at that time, did he or she say, I'm going to show you some pictures or a picture and maybe you'll recognize this person, maybe you won't?
Yes.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so you don't remember if you saw one picture or more than one picture, is that right?
I think it was more than one, but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. And you made an identification?
Yes.
Okay. And then in your mind, that identification is the thing that you said, correct?
Yes.
And that is the thing that you've said consistently since the first time that you went to court and you gave testimony on the 17th of December, correct?
Correct.
And then you said the same thing today, correct?
Correct.
And you identified not only Mr. Zuazo, but also Mr. Hernandez, correct?
Yes.
So, in your statement to the police, and I think this is to Detective Wigerman, who met with you a couple of times at the hospital and also at your son's house, you were being asked about the big man, and you were unable to provide a specific height range for him back on maybe October 12th or 13th, somewhere in there, in the days following the incident at your home. Do you remember that?
I was unable.
That's, well, I mean, that if the detective wrote that in his report, that you said that the Hispanic might have been 6 foot tall, that your husband was 6'2", and he was about as tall, and then...
I was talking about Mr. Zuazo at the time.
Okay, so you're saying that the person you were describing in the report was written down as the Hispanic man, but you're saying that you were talking about Mr. Zuazo?
Yes.
Okay, so you couldn't, and you said your husband was 6'2", and he might have been 6 foot?
Yes.
Okay. May I approach? I just want to show. Yes.
And this is from...
This is from the report that was written by Detective Wigerman, and it's got contradictory information, and I just want to know if she can look at that, if this would refresh her memory about what she told him.
Come on now, first match.
Sure.
Sidebar there inside of the courtroom because the defense very gingerly is calling out this witness over her identification of his client. They were wearing masks on that ring video that was already shown to these juries. Let's get to our break. When we come back, we'll have more of the home invasion hoax murder trial there in Michigan. This cross-examination of the surviving victim, the wife who is a victim of this home invasion.
On closing arguments, a family of 4 faces twisted allegations of caging and sexually abusing foster children. We'll bring you takeaways from today's big hearing.
Closing arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
These are the cases that captivated the world.
Couldn't keep my life straight. They were killed by their own children.
That challenged the legal system and ourselves. Court TV, legendary trials.
Two defendants, 2 juries, and 1 surviving victim. A wife who says she saw these 2 men kill her husband. These 2 men who stand accused of killing a jeweler, they are also accused of posing as utility workers to gain access to the home of the jewelry store owner, demanding to see inside of a safe and to get jewelry and money. And Linda Murray on the stand, she says they didn't keep jewelry inside of the house. Everything she had was costume jewelry, and they didn't have any money beyond what they kept on their person. Let's go back in. The defense attorney for one of those defendants, and this is Joshua Zuazo's attorney, is doing the questioning now for the wife, Linda Murray.
Let me just get this clear. You did not describe the man, the Hispanic man, to be 6 foot tall.
Correct.
Okay. And if somebody wrote that down in their report that you said so, that person is wrong about what you told them.
Yes.
Is that right? Okay, that's fair enough. Thank you. Do you remember telling the same detective that the second man, who now you are identifying as Mr. Zuazo, had his face mostly covered?
Yes.
Okay, so which was it? Did the man have his face mostly covered, or was it uncovered at some point?
I'm going to object. She's already clarified there's 2 different points in time. This is not a one-time question.
Well, let me just make that very clear. I'm not trying to imply otherwise. You've said that there was a point where Mr. Zuazo had the mask off, correct?
Yes.
Did you tell that to Detective Wegman, if you remember? And I know you might not, and that's fair. I get that. I'm just trying to make, I want to understand what your position is opposed to what it is he wrote down in this report I'm reading.
Okay, the mask wasn't completely off.
Okay, and so when he wrote down had his face mostly covered, that would be inaccurate based on what you were reporting to him.
Yes.
Judge,
okay.
Object again to the floor.
You can ask questions on redirect. All right. It just, if we could be more specific about to who she's talking to, because I don't know if she.
And I'll do that.
Serve that, but just making sure we know she knows who you're talking about.
It's Detective Wigman, who you might not recognize or remember exactly. I know you saw a lot of police officers, or detectives, but this is during one of those interviews that you had either in the hospital or at your son's home. It wasn't at your home. I don't know if that helps to refresh your memory.
It was in the ambulance.
Okay. Then was this individual didn't write anything down about him having the mask off at a particular time. And so if you told that to him, he didn't write it down. Is that correct? I mean, you can't explain what he did, but what I'm saying is if it isn't in there, it isn't because you didn't tell him. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. And it is your testimony today that he did not have, Mr. Zuazo did not have the mask on when he came up the steps. Is that right?
We have to hit the pause pause button on this testimony in Michigan because we have breaking news out of Tennessee. The case against Brandon Isabel. He's already been convicted of not only killing his girlfriend, but also throwing his 2-day-old baby into the Mississippi River. The jury was tasked with a penalty, and we understand that they now have a verdict in this second phase. There was a white light that's on the wall there inside of the courthouse, and it came on, indicating that these jurors have reached a verdict. 2 hours and 30 minutes they've been at it, and they were told that they had to make a decision on whether or not he qualified for parole. We're seeing that movement already inside of the courtroom. Not sure yet if the jury is inside. We'll see if they rise, but let's listen to what the judge says.
Kind enough to prepare the order for pre-sentence report, and I think we all agreed that we would show up for a report on October 31st if necessary, right? The hearing is set for, she wrote on here November 3rd, but I thought we agreed on November 12th.
You're in the courtroom?
Yes.
You may be seated. It is my understanding that a decision has been reached. Yes?
That's correct.
And is it unanimous?
Yes.
And all signatures are affixed to the document?
Yes.
If you'll please provide that document to Deputy Moore. Thank you. I told you when this started that I needed you to do this job. Thank you. You may be excused.
Jurors excused. Like to step.
Mr. Isabel, according to the documents provided by the foreperson of this jury, we, the jury, unanimously find that the state has proven the following: aggravating circumstance or circumstances beyond a reasonable doubt. The murder was committed against a person less than 12 years of age, and the defendant was 18 years of age or older. We, the jury, unanimously agree that the defendant shall be sentenced to imprisonment for life. You will return to this court on October 31st for the status report on the remaining charges. As to count 2, life imprisonment. As to count 1 was an automatic life sentence. And we'll pick up on counts 4 and 5, the aggravated child abuse and the especially aggravated kidnapping, on November 12th for a sentencing hearing after receiving this pre-sentence report. Thank you. We are adjourned.
All rise. This court now adjourned to 9 a.m. tomorrow morning.
The jury finding life in prison for Brandon Isabel, meaning I didn't hear the word no parole. So it sounds like he is going to get an opportunity for parole. He was 25 years when this happened. The prosecution had a powerful argument when they ended their closing, saying if he's not someone who should get life without parole, then who? Let's bring in, we have with us in studio, because we're on this verdict watch, Judge Ashley Wilcott, of our Court TV anchor, of course. Ashley, what do you think about the way this all came down?
Well, it was a little different than we usually see, Julia. I did what you did. We're both here watching, saying they didn't say no parole. They didn't say no parole. I'm a little bit surprised because I think I agree with the prosecution based on the evidence throwing a 2-day-old baby by its feet into the river, in part, along with the murder of the mother, I think would justify without parole, but we didn't hear that said.
Didn't hear that said, so it sounds likely that if he got life in prison, that it would be with parole. Let's also bring in trial attorney Lateef Gray, who's been analyzing this case with us. Lateef, your thoughts on this decision from the jury?
Just like you guys, if it's not life without parole, I'm surprised. I mean, given the heinousness and the callousness of this crime, along with the fact that I haven't heard any mitigating circumstances, I'm surprised he didn't get life without parole.
You know, when it comes to mitigating circumstances, we didn't hear a lot from his defense in terms of mental health that we sometimes hear. We didn't hear anything explaining what happened, but they did talk about his childhood. They did talk about how he grew up and that he didn't necessarily have anything. This was even during the guilt phase, that they talked about his good character as a person when he was younger, that he was nice to his sisters and was looking out for them. Do you think the jury just felt like perhaps his age was enough for them to say 25 years old at the time, perhaps he could be redeemed down the road?
Maybe. You know, the brain isn't fully developed in most males until they're about 25, so maybe the jury took some of that into consideration, but I'm still surprised, given his actions and his confession, that he didn't get life without parole.
And even though he gets parole, Ashley, that doesn't mean that he will get out. The parole board still has to weigh in here.
Exactly, and we know statistically most individuals are not released when they come up for parole, and so the reality is evidence can be presented at that time for the parole board to make the decision. The heinousness of the crimes, we'll see how he behaves in prison. He's still going to be in jail for a long time, if not life, with this, and we know sentencing will be held later in October and November.
Right, and you know, there are a lot of people, and you probably experienced this on your show as well, that our analysts felt like this was a death penalty case, should have been a death penalty case. So we already had a situation where he didn't have capital punishment on the table.
Yeah, I'm really surprised it is not without parole, but on the other hand, this is for one of the charges. They're going to have the other charges as well. When you put all those together, Julia, again, I think he will be in jail for a very long time, if not the rest of his natural life.
Absolutely. We have reached the top of the hour, so we do have to get in a break. Lateef Gray, thank you for your analysis. More of not only our coverage of what's happening in Tennessee and in Florida, but also the home invasion hoax murder trial in Michigan. More testimony there. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Judge Ashley Wilcott, honored to be with you today. We are tracking several major trials here at Court TV. First in Florida, a jury found former Deputy Leslie Boileau guilty of manslaughter today after he took the stand admitting that he aimed his gun directly at his girlfriend before shooting her between the eyes. And in Tennessee, just moments ago, a jury recommended life in prison for Brandon Isabel after he was found guilty of killing his 2-day-old daughter and her mom on his 25th birthday. Also in Florida, Army vet Daniel Stearns is on trial for fatally shooting his girlfriend and then disposing of her body. He says he shot her in self-defense. And in Michigan, the state's case continues for 2 men accused of posing as utility workers in order to rob and kill a local pawn shop owner. That is where we begin this hour on the stand. The surviving victim, Linda Murray, the wife of Hussein Murray. She's on cross-examination by the defense.
What was the mask? Do you know?
I don't.
Okay, was it like hanging? Pardon?
I don't recall exactly.
And I understand. It's a very traumatic and upsetting thing that's going on, and you're very much involved in that. You didn't see anything hanging out of a pocket or anything like that.
No.
And it wasn't laying on the floor.
No.
Correct? And it isn't something that, to your knowledge, ever was found in your home, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Excuse me just one second. Okay. Thank you very much, Mrs. Murray. I appreciate your testimony.
Cross-exam for Hernandez. Yes, thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Ms. Murray. Same goes for my questioning. If you don't understand something, just let me know and I'll try to ask it a different way, okay?
Okay.
Alrighty. Now, I know Mr. McCarthy kind of just touched on this. When you were giving your testimony, when Mr. Petrofessa was asking you questions, you identified the two people sitting at this table as Mr. Hernandez and Mr. Zuazo. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, you did not know these individuals prior to October 10th or October 11th, correct?
Correct.
And as you testified, you were provided the names after being shown pictures by the officers that came to your house or came to your son's house to discuss with you, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Now, on October 10th, you described that the individuals came at night and we saw a ring video of that time, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And you testified that you were upstairs during that whole interaction the night before on October 10th, correct?
Yes.
All right. So we can kind of tell from the sound, and I think you touched on this, when someone comes to your door and rings the doorbell, do you get a notification on your phone?
Yes.
Okay. Are you then able to communicate by talking into your phone to the person that's standing at your front door?
Yes.
Is that what you were doing that evening, or were you just yelling from upstairs? If you know.
Yelling from upstairs.
Okay. You would agree with me, obviously, you described a much longer conversation and event that we saw on the Ring camera. So does the Ring camera only videotape for a certain portion of time and then stops?
Seems like it, yes.
Okay. Now, you testified previously that at some point, due to the lateness in the evening, you yelled to your son, "Do you have your gun?" correct?
To my husband.
To your
yes.
husband, I apologize. And you testified that you said that loud enough because you wanted the people standing at the door to hear that, correct?
Correct.
And your testimony was that shortly after you made that statement, the two individuals decided to leave, correct?
Correct.
They did not force their way in that evening, correct?
Correct.
Now, you didn't receive any Ring notifications throughout that night indicating that anyone else was around your home, correct?
Correct.
Now, let's fast forward to the next morning. As we saw, the doorbell was rung again, and that's when you got that notification on your phone, correct?
Correct.
Now, it seems from the Ring video that you may have come to the door first, and then your husband came. Is that accurate, or did your husband go to the door first? We're talking about the morning.
Yeah. That part is a little unclear, but I think I was at the door also.
Okay. And again, your testimony is that Mr. Hernandez asked to come in the home, correct?
Correct.
There was no force to get into the home. There was simply a question, and then he was let in, correct?
Correct.
Now, you made mention about the security system that you have, and if a door is opened or closed, you kind of hear a chime. Is that correct?
Yes.
But if the door is left open, someone could go in and out multiple times without hearing that chime, correct?
Correct.
Now, we can kind of tell from the Ring doorbells that were played that the two individuals arrived at 11:22 and that the garage was shut at 11:41. So that's a total of 19 minutes. I know you described some time frames, like 10 to 15 minutes in the basement, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Does the 19 minutes that I am using based on the Ring camera sound accurate?
Yes.
Never at any point during interactions with either of the two individuals did you see any weapons, correct?
Correct.
Now, you described that there was some conversation about checking the furnace downstairs, correct?
Correct.
And that it was Mr. Zuazo and your husband that kind of started to go towards the basement?
Yes, correct.
And it was at that point that you testified Mr. Hernandez said that he had to go back outside and retrieve something from the truck?
Correct.
Now, you testified that you did not know whether or not he actually went outside because you didn't hear the chime, correct?
Correct.
But as we established previously, if the door had been left open, you would not have heard that chime. Fair to say?
Yes.
All right. Your testimony was that once Mr. Hernandez was back in the house, your husband and Zuazo go downstairs, and then I believe you paused a little bit, and then you also said then Hernandez went downstairs. So prior to Mr. Hernandez coming back into the house, had Mr. Zuazo and your husband gone downstairs?
No.
All right. So was there a pause in after your husband and Mr. Zuazo go downstairs, then Mr. Hernandez, or were they all walking in a line?
They were walking in line.
Understood. Now, you testified that you did not hear anything out of the ordinary in the basement, correct?
Correct.
And you testified that at some point in time, Mr. Hernandez came back upstairs, correct?
Correct.
Isn't it true that at that time he actually went to check the stove and the dryer with a meter?
No.
Isn't it true that, in fact, Mr. Hernandez was upstairs for a period of time, more than the seconds that you described, before Mr. Zuazo came up the stairs?
No.
So your testimony is that once Mr. Hernandez and once Mr. Zuazo were back upstairs, that is when Mr. Hernandez started asking you about jewelry or money, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Where was Mr. Zuazo during that line of questioning?
Behind Hernandez.
Okay. Now, I know that you had mentioned at some point in time during that conversation you asked where your husband was. Is that before or after you saw blood on Mr. Zuazo's clothing?
Before and after.
Okay. Now, you described...
We're going to take a pause here and welcome our guest this hour, former Deputy Public Defender Philip Dubé. Philip, I got to tell you, this woman, a pillar of strength. I find her very believable. She lost her husband in this random home invasion. By random, I mean they didn't know these two defendants that allegedly pretended to be utility workers coming into the home, shooting and killing her husband, and she has to recount all of these details.
Yeah, and I hate to say it, but these home invasion, murder, robberies are actually quite common, particularly out here in Los Angeles. But I think these two defendants, or at least one of them, had it in his or their heads that there was some gold, if you will, to be found within the home, or jewelry or other valuables and riches. And unfortunately, it cost Mr. Murray his life. And I think what's at issue here, though, is application of the felony murder rule in the state of Michigan. In 1980, the state Supreme Court abolished the felony murder doctrine as it pertains to accomplices, unless you can show that the accomplice shared an intent to kill during the underlying felony. So here, the underlying felony was home invasion robbery. And unless you can show that both harbored that intent, I think the jury can only come back on the underlying felony itself, namely home invasion robbery, which does not carry life. So I think the reason why each of these young men have a separate jury is so that the juries don't sort of inherently lump all the evidence together and use it for cross-admissibility purposes against both co-defendants. So I think they're going to analyze frame by frame, pixel by pixel, what, if anything, each co-defendant did. And I think one or both is going to argue that the other actually did the homicide. They were only there to rob the place and they had no knowledge of a pending murder.
And so, you know, they could find one had the intent to murder, the other didn't, both didn't, or both did. But Philip, to your point, I think it may be my understanding from looking at all of our information coming to us from inside the courtroom by our Court TV staff is that the juries may be coming in only for their portion of the trial. Could you envision that, or do you think both juries are in there at the same time?
Well, remember, each jury is impaneled as to a specific defendant. So unless the evidence that's being presented is being offered against both defendants, there's no need to have both juries sitting there. Juries have sort of, I don't want to say a difficult, but a challenging time parsing out evidence and its applicability to the defendant that they're in judgment of. And the last thing that you want a jury to do is to mishear or misinterpret evidence that might be actually intended for the other. So that's why you only bring the jury in to hear the evidence against that particular jury's defendant. And it's to avoid that confusion and a misapplication of the facts.
Yeah, absolutely agree with you. And you have to do that. It's okay to have one trial, but you can't have both juries hearing every piece of evidence against the other defendant that doesn't apply to their own. All right, stand by if you would, Philip, please. We are going to have more of the invasion hoax murder trial up next. We'll be right back.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, a family of 4 faces twisted allegations of caging and sexually abusing foster children. We'll bring you takeaways from today's big hearing.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
4 dead students.
None of it seemed to make any sense.
He was evil.
What devastation.
All I can do is scream.
Victim to Verdict with Ted Rowlands. New episode Saturday night, 8 Eastern and Pacific.
Only on Court TV.
Head back to Michigan now on the home invasion hoax murder trial. 2 men stand accused of posing as utility workers and then killing the owner of a pawn shop at his home back in October of last year. Right now, we had left off. The victim's wife is on the stand. She's still facing cross-examination by the defense. To clarify, there are 2 juries. The first defense attorney completed his cross-examination. The second defense attorney for the other defendant is now engaging in her cross-examination. Let's go back in for more.
Now, you described that you were not necessarily given an answer of where your husband was, correct, at first? And then I believe your testimony was following that you were able to look at what Mr. Zuazo was wearing and you saw blood, correct?
Correct.
Can you describe that?
There was a stripe of red blood on his right side of his vest.
Okay. And at that point in time, I believe that you indicated that you let out a scream, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I see that you are wearing glasses today. Do you remember if you were wearing glasses during this time frame that we're talking about right now?
Yes.
Okay. You indicated that you were hit in the face. Were you wearing glasses at that time?
Yes.
Were your glasses pushed into your face?
Yes.
At some point in time, you testified that Mr. Hernandez walked you over to the kitchen table and then you sat down there, correct?
Correct.
Do you recall if he touches your arm to take you there?
Yes.
You then testified at some point in time that Mr. Hernandez took off your watch, correct?
Correct.
That was on your wrist?
Yes.
Obviously, he was close to you when he was doing that, correct?
Correct.
Were you watching him take your watch off?
Yes.
You then testified that he took your cell phone, is that correct?
Yes.
Where was your cell phone at the time?
On the table.
Was it close to you or far away?
Close to me.
Did you watch him as he took your cell phone and put it in his pocket?
Yes.
You then testified that Mr. Hernandez went through your purse, I believe you said he took your key and some cash, correct?
Correct.
How close was your purse to you?
Inches.
Did you watch him go into your purse?
Yes.
You testified that it was only Mr. Zuazo who went upstairs, and I believe you could hear things being thrown around. Is that correct?
Correct.
And your testimony was that Mr. Hernandez never went upstairs, correct?
Correct.
You testified that while all of that was going on upstairs, Mr. Hernandez was putting duct tape on your hands and feet, correct?
Correct.
I'm assuming he was pretty close to you since he was putting the tape on your body. Is that correct?
Correct.
Were you watching him as he put the duct tape on your hands and your ankles?
Yes.
Now, I know Mr. McCarthy went through some of this, but you have had multiple interviews with the police, fair to say?
Yes.
Okay. You've also, I'm sure, met with the prosecutors a number of times, correct?
Correct.
And you've previously testified in a court hearing, correct?
Correct.
Now, in all of those close interactions with Mr. Hernandez, you have never reported that you saw any blood on Mr. Hernandez, correct?
Correct.
There was some questioning about your husband having a gun. Do you remember that line of questioning from Mr. Petrofessa?
Correct.
Okay. You never saw that gun at any point after your husband went in the basement, correct?
Correct.
That gun was never pointed at you by either of the individuals that were in your house, correct?
Correct.
And again, you were never threatened with any weapons, correct?
Correct.
I have no further questions.
Okay, redirect.
Thank you, Judge. Just briefly, is it fair to say the events of October 11th, there was a lot of police involvement, a lot of the sheriff's office involved in having contact with you?
Yes.
How many deputies or detectives would you say you had contact with either on that day or over time? Total, what would you guess?
4.
Okay. And how many of those 4 can you name?
None.
Okay. So they're kind of like you might have talked to some but not know the name of the people that you talked to. Is that fair?
Yes, I'm sure they told me the name, but I don't remember who's who.
Okay. When you gave your first statements to Detective Officer Hagelin on that 2/12 on October 11th, did you describe the 2 individuals to him as one white or Hispanic male, tall and fat, very fat, possibly in his 40s, and one black male, average height, average weight? I believe he had a mustache or beard, possibly in his 30s. Is that how you first described him?
Correct.
Okay, and that was before any names were attached to him later on in the world when you learned of names Hernandez and Zuazo. Is that correct?
Correct.
And on TV, they were also identified on the television that you would watch?
Yes.
Okay. And I want to try to be specific about this because you were asked several times by counsel about mostly covered versus uncovered. Are there different periods of time when you're dealing with defendant Zuazo when his face covering is different, or does it remain the same throughout the entire interaction on the 11th?
No, when he comes up the stairs, it's different.
Okay. And before he was mostly covered, is that correct?
Yes.
And after he comes up the stairs, he's not covered?
Not completely.
Not completely covered. Was it enough for you to see his face?
Yes.
So let me ask you this one more step, which after defense counsel brought it, I just want to go one more step because there's a period of time after defendant Zuazo is now up on the stairs. He's on your level, and then he goes to the upstairs area, correct?
Correct.
Then he returns and he comes back to your level, correct?
Correct.
And then both him and defendant Hernandez try to put you in a closet, correct?
Correct.
And then they exit the building, your residence, right?
Correct.
Okay, now specifically, and take time to, I don't think you've ever been asked this, but take time to remember before you answer. In that final time when defendant Zuazo comes down and they're trying to put you in that closet, how would you describe his face covering at that point in time?
He was covered.
He was back to being covered.
Yes.
You also identified the DTE truck. Could you tell us how it was that you were able to identify the DTE truck? How did you see it?
When upstairs by my master bedroom, by the banister, there's a window. And I could see through that window, I could see the truck in front of the house.
Okay, when you say you were upstairs, so we're talking about on the night of the 10th.
Yes.
Okay, on the day of the 11th, did you look at what type of vehicle was out there on the 11th?
Yes.
Okay, and how was it that you saw a vehicle on the 11th?
Through the door.
And let me just ask you, is there any doubt in your mind under oath that defendant Hernandez was one of the two men that was there both on the 10th and the 11th?
No doubt.
Is there any doubt in your mind that defendant Zuazo was one of the two men that was there both on the 10th and the 11th?
No doubt.
I don't have any other questions.
Okay, all right, thank you, Ms. Murray. You may step down. Watch your step as you step down.